guys, I've just been informed that Martians have landed on the Earth and they're out there advocating and preaching incest. And if matters couldn't get any worse, I've also been informed that we have extraterrestrials that have just landed from Venus, right? And they appear to be very cute. So be on the watch out for them. Be on the lookout because they appear to be very cute. A cross between like a pink fluffy kitten and a koala bear. So when you go up to them and try and greet them by petting them, they return their greeting to you by raping you, right? Yeah, they actually forcibly have intercourse with you. They mount themselves on you. And if you try to, resist, they take it as disrespect. The same way if I was to put my hand out and shake it with you and you turned away, I would take that to be a form of disrespect. Well, they claim that where they're from in planet Venus, if you don't allow them to rape you when they greet you, that's a bit rude. Now, as insane as that sounds, the question that I want you to actually bring to your mind is, can we objectively say, as humans from Earth, that what the Martians and aliens from Venus are doing is wrong?
So why is it sensible for a woman to be covered up and not a man?
Well, I am covered.
No, you're not covered up. You're not covered up.
You're
not put in a bag like some of the people back there.
Well, it's not really a bag.
No, it is,
yeah?
as far as I'm concerned. The morals in that book are reprehensible. If a brother and a sister loved each other and used contraception, is there something absolutely morally wrong about that? But all I can see is intolerance when I see those principles applied. But the Islamic God, much like the Judeo-Christian God, is a real creep. So why should we believe in a hateful, unmerciful, petty, sadomasochistic, homophobic, sexist God? It's just irrational. It's not sensible.
But my 200 million great-grandfather was a fish.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. We begin with the name of Allah, and may peace and blessings be upon His messenger, Muhammad. Okay, guys, so many of you have seen that clip that just went past. Professor Krauss is continually passing moral judgments in the debate against Hamza Tzortzis. This is quite strange because the debate title, the question, was not, is Islam or atheism which is more moral, but rather Islam or atheism which is more sensible, right? And Hamza presented a case for why Islam is more sensible, it's more rational, and he presented forth some deductive arguments that were very coherent, and Professor Krauss didn't actually address any of these. Rather, what he did, and it was kind of like a red herring, was make a whole load of moral judgments against Islam, and that was his way of kind of, proving that atheism was more sensible. Well, on that note, right, Hamza actually called the professor out, and Hamza said, well, Professor, as an atheist, right, you don't actually have a grounds by which you can validate your morality to be objective. So how are you pointing the finger, right? Remember, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. That's really what he was saying. And the professor didn't actually understand this. And to be honest, I don't blame him, because a lot of the stuff Hamza says, I love him for the sake of Allah. He's my brother, right? My older brother, in fact. But some of the stuff he says does go way over your head, right? So I don't actually blame the professor for not actually appreciating what he was saying. And this is why I chose to make this video, because I know many of you guys out there could be equally perplexed, right? But the fact of the matter is that the thing that Hamza tried to bring to the professor's attention is something that we need to actually focus on, because it holds a lot of weight. Because in essence, what Hamza's asking is, Professor, as an atheist, can you say morality is objective, meaning what you're saying is right and what I'm saying is wrong, or vice versa? Or is morality just basically like something that's down to personal preference? For example, my favorite food is chips, and my favorite color is pink. I don't care if you think that's girly, man. I like pink, you know what I'm saying? And you might like red, and that's just down to personal preference. So before I go into this, right, and exploring if we can validate objective morality on atheism, I just want to highlight a few key terms. Objective and subjective. When I say objective morality, I mean morals that are true, independent of what anyone thinks. Okay? Independent of what anyone thinks. I just want to highlight, I'm not committing to what is a moral truth, but I'm just talking about moral truths in general existing, okay? And a subjective moral truth would be a moral truth that is dependent upon what an individual's opinion might be. It is dependent upon the opinions of people, right? So let's go over to the atheist explanation for morality, because morality it does exist. And let's see where atheism takes us. Does it take us down the road of subjectivity or objectivity? And this is quite interesting. So the first explanation that atheism provides is evolution, right? Now I'm actually going to argue that evolution, if this was the basis for morality, it would lead us to the destination of subjective morals. Why do I say this? Because natural selection would retain morals not on the basis of their truth value, but on the basis of their survival value. I mean, the truth of those morals would have no bearing on the notion of survival of the fittest or natural selection, right? As long as the morals help the species survive, I mean, that's what it takes. And you can have things that you can actually do things for your survival that could be immoral. I mean, if we look at the animal kingdom, for example, most of the things that happen in the animal kingdom, if humans were to embark upon such, if humans were to take part in such practices and such acts, it would be deemed very immoral. For example, a lion, right, killing a zebra. I mean, if a human being wants to kill a human being, it wouldn't be killing, it would be murder, right? When a great white shark copulates with a female great white shark, it wouldn't be forced intercourse, it would be rape. You see what I'm saying? So on that basis, right, we can clearly say that evolution, it brings us to subjective morality, not objective morality, right? The only other explanation that atheism can rely on is social pressure. Now, social pressure by definition would result in morals that are relative, in other words, subjective, because it would be dependent upon the specific society, the specific kind of ideas that were there at that time, and that would obviously put pressure on the people to have the kind of morals that they would. For example, Nazi Germany, right? I mean, this insane and maniac idea that, you know, the Aryans are the superior race to other races like the Jews and annihilate them and handicap people, put them in gas chambers, Zyklon B and kill them. I mean, that is an example of what you could say is social pressure in that regard. But we wouldn't say that that is the way things go, because just because a few people misbehaved, it doesn't mean that they speak on behalf of everyone else. I mean, the whole world today, even people in Germany, right, stand and speak against the views of the Nazis and say, look, that was objectively wrong, okay? But let's not go into objective morality just yet. The point is that both roads, evolution and social pressure, the only roads that atheism can take to explain morality lead us to subjective morality, okay? Now, the point that I want to highlight here so far is that Professor Krauss was speaking like his morals were objective. He was saying, you guys are this, and you guys are that, and you guys are this, and you guys are that, and your women wear bags and Sharia law this and Sharia law that, right? I mean, in essence, it's a bit unfair for him to be doing that. I mean, his worldview can only provide an explanation for morals being subjective. So the fact that Muslim women wear bags on their heads, or men grow beards, or we prefer to sit, you know, we prefer to not free mix in terms of genders. I mean, that's just as arbitrary as personal preference. I mean, the same way, you know, pink's my favorite color. Like, you know, you should just chill out. I mean, if he doesn't like how we dress, I wasn't really particularly fond of his blazer. I mean, not attacking him as a person, but I mean, come on, his swagger was kind of peak, right? And don't worry about the picture, right? This will make sense in a second. Now, I want to go a step further and go beyond Professor Krauss, right? And I want to actually argue that morality is not subjective. Morality is not dependent on people's opinions, but in fact, morality is objective. And I'm going to argue that I have actually very good grounds to actually say this. And in fact, right, whether you guys know it right now or not, but 99.9% of the people out there, including yourselves, yep, that's right, you, actually affirm that morals are objective. For example, right, if I told you about the ancient Hindu practice of suti, where the widow is thrown on the burning funeral pile of her deceased husband, Yeah, that reaction right there. Exactly. That's what I was expecting, right? Like really? That's disgusting. I mean, if you're not convinced yet, okay, let's go a step further. Let me tell you a very, very sad story, right? And this is actually all over YouTube. There was a young Iraqi lady, right, who was attacked in her house by foreign soldiers, unjustly, stripped naked by men with guns, and she was raped. She was gang raped. Her family was downstairs. She was resisting the rape. So what they did was they went downstairs. They murdered her entire family. She heard the shots, was screaming while she was basically naked, and they had their hands all over her. The guy who fired the bullets came up and he said, "I killed your effing family," right? And then they began to violate her at the same time, right? Now, anyone who comes across a story like this and, you know, is generally sane would agree that's wrong. That's evil. And I don't think anyone is prepared to go the other way and accept that morals are subjective. Because if you say that you're not objective and they're subjective, then in essence, you're saying that raping a woman and killing her family, taking a baby and throwing it in the trash can, throwing a woman onto the burning funeral pile of her deceased husband, right, is basically just socially unconventional. And what is something that's socially unconventional? A man that goes to play a football match with a tuxedo on is socially unconventional. A man that farts and burps at a dinner table is socially unconventional. A woman that goes clubbing with Ronald McDonald lipstick on her face is socially unconventional. It's not evil, it's not bad, it's not wrong, it's just distasteful, right? I mean, to each their own. And if you don't affirm that morals are objective, then basically that's exactly what you're doing. You're saying that all these atrocious things are on the same level as a woman just basically going out there and just being socially unconventional. Now, no one actually, as human beings, we don't affirm to that, right? We want to affirm that our children have moral worth and moral value and we have a duty to them. We want to affirm that, you know, when you get married, you know, your wife shouldn't cheat on you, right? Or your husband shouldn't cheat on you, and things like that, right? So we can affirm that morality is objective. You don't really need to go much further than that, right? I mean, it's a pretty general thing, but and you can test this within yourself. Now, here's the amazing thing, right? And there's where I want to conclude at. Atheism cannot justify morality. The view that the divine doesn't exist, or that the divine is not necessary, cannot provide an explanation for it. In fact, that explanation is incoherent with the reality, because it leads us down to subjectivity, and we know that's not the case. But we can't just turn a blind eye to morality because it exists. We need to find an explanation for it. Well, maybe science will explain one day. Well, I would say that's science of the gaps. You're finding a gap in reality and you're just sticking science there. And that's wrong. Why? Because morals are not something physical. They're not something material, right? They're not something that you can put in a test tube and evaluate. You see what I'm saying? And up until now, we felt that the scientific explanation would be evolution. We've seen how that's failed. So we need to find an explanation. We need to go beyond what we have right now. And we need to look towards an explanation, right? And you'll find that once exhausting all of the avenues and accepting that morals are objective and they exist, regardless of what they are, the fact that they exist, you have nowhere to run other than to affirm and accept that morality is a result of a superior moral agent. In other words, the divine, who we refer to as Muslims as Allah. Now I just want to clarify here, right? I'm not saying that atheists are bad people. Please don't misconstrue what I'm saying, right? Because the argument is not you have to believe in Allah to do good. Even though that's questionable because there are theological implications there from the Islamic perspective. But nonetheless, that's not what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is, can there even be good without Allah? Because in the absence of Allah, I mean, you don't have an anchor to ground morals objectively. And if morals are subjective, then there's no good and evil. As Richard Dawkins says, right? It's just pitiless indifference. Which is adverse to what he says, because he goes out and says religion is evil, but he affirms that there's no evil in the universe, which is quite silly. Okay, so I just want to leave it on that note. And just so you guys are aware, right, the Quran is actually aware. It speaks to the individual, knowing that the person has this innate disposition to not only believe in the Creator, but this innate disposition of morality, right? This innate knowledge. We have this view of something that is known as the fitrah, this innate kind of natural state. And every person is born in this state. And one of the benefits of this state is that it has a knowledge that that the person didn't have to learn in this world that they come in with. And the Quran actually, if you look at the first line of it, and the first chapter, chapter 1, the opening, right? It says in the Arabic, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise and thanks is due to the Master of the worlds. And that's actually quite interesting, because when you expect a book written by an individual, they don't start off the book just getting down to it, right? They first introduce themselves, or they introduce the topic at hand. Hi, my name is so-and-so. So you would expect the creator to be like, hi, by the way, I'm the creator. You know, I created you. Do you remember me? And here's the evidences for it. And pow. Now, this is what I want you to do. But the Quran doesn't start like that. The Quran knows you already know, whether you know it or not. But the Quran is speaking to your soul, your heart. It's speaking to your natural state, or in other words, your consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, right? But it's speaking to something deeper than what is present in the physical, right? And that's actually quite coherent to what we've just discussed here. I'm not saying that's evidence right there. Don't get me wrong, right? I'm not going as far as saying that. But what I'm saying is that the Quran is actually quite coherent to what we come to know. And this has actually been quite, you know... Okay, I'm going to leave it there, because we've already got off on a tangent. No worries. I just want to conclude. And everything we've discussed, I want to put it in the form of a deductive argument, right? And don't worry, I'll be explaining what a deductive argument is in a future video, or because this was another thing that Professor Krauss wasn't quite, you know, he had a bit of difficulty kind of coming to terms with. But the argument is as follows. If Allah does not exist, then objective morals, values and duties don't exist. But objective moral values and duties do exist. Now, if you take these two premises, and you appreciate the truth of these premises and the logic of them, and no one is prepared to, you know, deny the two, and as we've discussed, then you are compelled to affirm the conclusion that you can't escape from, and that is that Allah exists, right? So I hope I was, you know, I shed some light in that regard. And forgive me if I made any mistakes. I mean, anything bad is, any shortcomings from my own self, and I will try and, you know, work harder. I really hope that I could have benefited you guys. So we'll leave it there and hopefully catch you in the next video. In the meantime, please do share and subscribe, right? This is a new channel, and we like for you guys to be, you know, to be able to follow us, and, you know, hopefully, you know, we love engaging in discussions with you guys, and, you know, there's nothing better than having a good chit chat. You know what I'm saying? So please, you know, like, and feel free to comment. Be very interested in hearing what you guys have to say. If we've made any mistakes, please do correct us. We're open to that. So have a good day. My name is Imran ibn Mansur. Peace.